So, hi everybody. I am a Mohawk woman who's from Tyendinaga Mohawk Territory in southern Ontario. It's just 2 hours east of here. And I grew up not knowing that I was Mohawk, not knowing that I was Indigenous. And fortunately, because of colonialization, it's a very common thing that a lot of people have dealt with. My parents felt that it wasn't safe to talk to us about our identity. They thought it was safer for us to grow up as Canadians. And I remember going to a parade with my dad when I was 4, and I was sitting up on his shoulders. And my grandpa was with his men's group from the reserve in the parade, kind of like the Shriners. And I remember saying, "Look, Dad, there's Grandpa dressed up as an Indian." Because I had no education, no context to understand about our identity at that point in time. And then I remember this other thing that happened when I was in grade 7. You know that 1 week a year that we all study Native people in our history class in Ontario classrooms? Well, there was this boy snickering in the back of the room, and one of them said a number of things that were heard by the teacher, and the teacher said, "What do you have to share with the class?" And this boy, Greg Morrow, said, "Well, Indians are all just lushes and alcoholics who leech off the government and get their education paid for, so why are we bothering to learn about them?" And I stood up and said, "That's not right." And he said, "Oh yeah? Well, what do you know?" And I sat down and hung my head in shame because I didn't know. I knew in my gut that what he was saying was wrong, but I didn't have the tools, exposure, or safety, or skills to be able to articulate any of the things that I was feeling. A number of years ago, from 2002 to 2004, I was given an opportunity because the Government of Canada, through Revenue Canada, had put a lot of pressure on our communities to pay income tax no matter what and lose a number of our Indigenous rights, status Indian rights. But at the time, there were loopholes in the tax law, and a number of activists, thousands of us from mostly Toronto and Ontario, working in those cities, but being paid through a reserve. Our employer was on reserve, our payroll was on reserve, and the money was being deposited to reserve. And we were getting harassed from Revenue Canada. But Revenue Canada agreed in writing to an agreement with us to say that they would take 4 test cases to the Supreme Court to determine how the law should be changed. And in the meantime, they would not harass any of our employees. They wouldn't retroactively harass any of us or penalize us for our choice, and that they would all absolutely make a decision in the future about the law, but they wouldn't go backwards. Well, only 1 test case went to court. We won. It was appealed by Revenue Canada, and we lost. A second test case went to the Supreme Court, and we were told that it got sent back to the beginning because there wasn't enough data. Revenue Canada started harassing us. So now for the last 6 years, all of us have been dealing with appeals, which the Government of Canada and Revenue Canada have now ignored. Just before Harper left office, he sent in a letter indicating that he was aware that 90% of the employees of these 2 organizations were Native women, and that many of them, a huge proportion of them, were single mothers. And that being said, he instructed the Minister of Revenue Canada to aggressively garnish this group and to prioritize them over quote-unquote gangsters and smugglers. Now, that being said, I have a master's degree and I'm ABD on my doctoral dissertation in education. I work very, very hard. I currently have 5 jobs. I'm a single mother. My daughter is 10. And yet I have to classify myself as a working Indigenous poor person. A year and a half ago, Revenue Canada started aggressively garnishing me, 30% of my pay. So after 7 years of leaving an abusive relationship and getting myself out of debt, 2 months later, I was going more heavily into debt every single month. So I've been dealing with the last few years, especially the last 3 years, of just worrying all the time about keeping the roof over my head. And what happened in December was all of the workers at Revenue Canada were instructed to freeze all of our accounts. So just before Christmas, the most vulnerable population in the country of Native people, but particularly mostly Native women, all of our accounts were frozen until we could pay back a significant amount. I'm now aware that there's dozens of us in our group of thousands of people from these 2 companies that have already claimed bankruptcy and lost their homes and lost their mortgages. And I'm on the verge of this right now as well too. And I worry for the future of my daughter, and I worry for what I can give to her. And I really care about what the future is for my daughter. I had to go to school and use my education to learn about who I am, to learn about my history and my culture and my language. And I want her to be able to go to school for whatever it is that she wants to go to school for. I want her to have the freedom for that. But I'm passing around a piece of paper. I'm wondering if any of you would be interested in signing up for an email list. And this Wednesday at 5 p.m. at Victoria Hall in room 303, I'm going to have a meeting of anybody who would like to help to volunteer. We've got a number of events coming up for International Women's Day and Mother's Day that I need volunteers for, and I could really use your help trying to work not just for my daughter's future, but also for the future of all the other single mothers that are in this group.